She sauntered into the executive boardroom like she'd just emerged from a Silicon Valley incubator. Blazer too crisp for our startup's casual culture. Smile too practiced for someone who claimed to value authenticity. Said her name was Morgan, but everything about her screamed, "I've memorized every page of Disruption Weekly." The sleek tablet she carried might as well have been a guillotine, and we were all about to lose our heads. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Morgan fired up a presentation titled, "The Cognitive Revolution: Embracing AI as the New Workforce." Within 3 slides, she had managed to insult everything I'd built over 7 years as the company's lead data architect. Slide 4 was particularly brutal. A giant checkmark next to automated decision systems, and a glaring red X over human data oversight. Morgan looked directly at me, flashed that venture capital smile and said, "Some people cling to outdated processes, but innovation waits for no one." Everyone in the room nodded along, not because they agreed, but because disagreeing with the CEO's new AI consultant might put a target on their backs. I kept my expression neutral, the way you do when a stranger's dog starts growling at you in an elevator. 7 years, I had built our data architecture from scratch. Not the glamorous front end that clients saw, but the crucial backbone where information got verified, anomalies got flagged, and our fintech clients' money stayed where it belonged. And now this algorithm evangelist in designer shoes was telling my team I was a relic, like I was a typewriter someone forgot to donate. The real gut punch came when Morgan announced that ThinkerCore, the new AI decision platform, would be going live in 2 weeks. "We've completed beta testing with flying colors. It's truly plug and play," she gushed, making a chef's kiss gesture like she'd just perfected a soufflé instead of potentially destabilizing our entire data ecosystem. I wasn't angry yet. That emotion arrived much later. What I felt in that moment was a cold, creeping dread. The kind that settles in your stomach when you realize no one else in the room understands what's about to happen. I glanced around at my team, Dev, Amira, Rishi, all avoiding eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their notepads or laptops. That's when it dawned on me. They had no idea what my job actually entailed. The human element of data architecture isn't just about writing clean code or building efficient systems. It's about understanding the patterns that algorithms miss, the contextual nuances that can't be quantified. In our case, it was about catching the sophisticated attempts by certain clients to manipulate transaction data for tax advantages. Nothing illegal, but definitely in gray territory that required human judgment and institutional knowledge. After the meeting, our CEO, Victor, pulled me aside. Victor had been a coding prodigy in the late 90s who rode the first tech wave and never quite understood why everyone couldn't just innovate faster. He had the emotional intelligence of a keyboard and the patience of a startup's runway. "Elena, I need you to cooperate fully with Morgan during this transition," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "ThinkerCore represents a significant investment, and we need all hands on deck to ensure seamless integration. Victor, I have concerns about removing human oversight from our validation protocols," I started. "Some of our larger clients have unique data structures that require contextual." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need to evolve beyond. ThinkerCore doesn't just replicate human decision-making, it improves upon it. Morgan's team has shown me the benchmarks. It's processing financial datasets with 99.8% accuracy. Accuracy isn't the issue." I tried again. "It's about judgment calls and institutional knowledge that, Elena," Victor's voice took on that patronizing tone he used when he thought someone wasn't getting with the program. "Change is hard, I get it. But this is happening. Morgan will need complete access to your systems and documentation. Consider this an opportunity to expand your skill set into something more future-oriented." Quote, the subtext was clear: adapt or become obsolete. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without saying something I'd regret. As I walked back to my desk, I could feel the weight of what was coming settling on my shoulders. ThinkerCore wasn't just a new tool, it was my replacement, gift-wrapped in venture capital and buzzwords. That night, I stayed late, alone in the office except for the cleaning staff. The blue light of my monitor illuminated stacks of documentation I'd built over years. Process flows, exception handling protocols, client-specific validation rules. The invisible infrastructure that kept our financial data clean and our clients happy. I pulled up the technical specs for Thinker Core that Morgan had grudgingly shared. Machine learning models, natural language processing, predictive analytics. All impressive technologies, certainly. But as I dug deeper, I could see the gaps. No specialized understanding of our industry's regulatory quirks. No recognition of the subtle patterns certain clients used to obscure fund movements between related entities. No concept of the relationships and history that informed my daily judgment calls. I wasn't fighting against progress. I'd championed automation for routine tasks throughout my career. What bothered me was the recklessness, the blind faith that I could seamlessly replace human expertise without understanding the full scope of what that expertise entailed. Over the next week, Morgan became my shadow, peering over my shoulder as I walked her through our systems. She recorded everything, took meticulous notes, but I could tell she was only half listening, already mentally replacing my processes with Thinker Core's algorithms. "This all seems unnecessarily complex," she remarked, watching me manually review a set of transactions from Finance Flow, one of our largest clients. Thinker Core could analyze this entire batch in seconds. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "It's not about speed," I explained, highlighting a specific transaction. "See this transfer between subsidiaries? It looks routine, but I know Finance Flow's structure. This doesn't match their usual patterns. An algorithm might miss that without the context." Morgan smiled the way adults smile at children who believe in Santa Claus. "That's the old paradigm talking, Elena. Thinker Core doesn't just follow rules, it learns patterns. It will pick up these anomalies much faster than a human ever could." I wanted to argue but recognized the futility. Morgan didn't want to understand. She wanted to implement. To her, I wasn't a knowledge resource. I was a legacy system being decommissioned. The following Monday, I arrived to find my access credentials had been modified. I could still log in, but certain administrative functions were now restricted. When I called IT, they awkwardly informed me that Morgan had requested the changes as part of the, quote, transition protocol. By Wednesday, Morgan had assembled the entire data team for Thinker Core training. The platform's interface was sleek, I'll give it that, all minimalist design and intuitive workflows. As the demonstration progressed, I noticed my colleagues' initial skepticism giving way to cautious enthusiasm. Thinker Core made everything look easy, effortless. It generated reports in seconds that would have taken me hours to compile. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, were the nuances being lost, the contextual judgments being reduced to probability scores, the institutional knowledge being discarded in favor of pattern recognition algorithms trained on generic datasets. During the Q&A, I raised my hand. How does Thinker Core handle client-specific anomalies that don't match its training data? Morgan beamed. Great question. Thinker Core continuously learns from new data inputs. Any unfamiliar patterns are flagged for review, then incorporated into its knowledge base. It's literally getting smarter every day. And who reviews those flags during the learning phase? I pressed. Her smile faltered slightly. Initially, we'll have a small team monitoring the system's outputs. But the beauty of Thinker Core is that this oversight will become less necessary as the system refines its understanding. In other words, they'd still need humans, just fewer of them, and none with my specific expertise. The writing was on the wall, illuminated in Thinker Core's sleek blue interface. I wasn't being upskilled or reassigned, I was being phased out. The question wasn't if, but when. That night, I updated my resume for the first time in 7 years. It felt strange cataloging my achievements, trying to translate what I did into bullet points that would make sense to outsiders. How do you quantify preventing problems that never happened because you were there to catch them? How do you measure the value of institutional knowledge? The following week, Thinker Core went live. Morgan orchestrated the launch like a space mission. complete with a countdown and champagne. Victor gave a speech about embracing the future and technological courage. I stood in the back, nursing a plastic cup of lukewarm Prosecco, watching my colleagues celebrate the system that would ultimately reduce our department's headcount. For the first few days, Thinker Core performed flawlessly, at least on the surface. Reports generated on time, data processed without visible errors, dashboards updated with pristine visualizations. Morgan was triumphant, showing Victor real-time efficiency metrics that painted a picture of revolutionary improvement. What they didn't notice or chose to ignore were the subtle shifts in the data patterns. Certain validation checks that I would have flagged were sailing through. Client-specific rules were being applied inconsistently. The system was making decisions based on majority patterns, missing the exceptions that required human judgment. I documented everything quietly, creating a log of concerns that no one had asked for. Not as sabotage, but as professional diligence. If things went sideways, I wanted a record showing I had seen it coming. On day 9 of the Thinker Core era, I was called into human resources. Jenna, our HR director, had the uncomfortable expression of someone about to euthanize a pet. "Elena, I want to start by acknowledging your tremendous contributions to the company," she began, reading from what was clearly a prepared script. "As we evolve our technological infrastructure, we're reevaluating our staffing needs across departments." I saved her the trouble. "You're letting me go." She looked relieved not to have to say the words. "We're offering a generous severance package, 6 months' salary, extended health benefits, and outplacement services." Victor wanted me to emphasize that this is a structural decision, not a reflection on your performance. Of course it wasn't. My performance had been exemplary for 7 years. It just wasn't valued anymore. "When?" I asked simply. "End of the week. We'll need you to complete knowledge transfer documentation and exit interviews." Knowledge transfer. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were replacing me with an AI, but still needed to extract whatever information remained in my human brain. I nodded, thanked her mechanically, and returned to my desk. My team knew immediately from my expression. Amira, my most talented analyst, looked on the verge of tears. Dev awkwardly offered to take me for drinks after work. Rishi just shook his head in disbelief. I declined their consolations. I didn't want pity, and I didn't want to badmouth the company they still worked for. Instead, I focused on documenting everything I could about our systems, our clients, the unique challenges I'd encountered over the years. Not because I owed it to Victor or Morgan, but because I cared about the integrity of what I'd built. My last day was surreal. Victor was conveniently traveling. Morgan stopped by briefly to wish me all the best in your future endeavors, with the sincerity of an automated email response. My team threw together a hasty goodbye lunch at the Thai place across the street. They gave me a card with a gift certificate to a coding bootcamp specializing in AI. They meant well. As I packed my desk, the collection of stress balls, the framed photo of my hiking trip to Patagonia, the stack of conference badges accumulating dust, I felt strangely calm. Not defeated, not even particularly angry anymore. Just detached. 7 years reduced to a cardboard box and a digital footprint that would soon be overwritten. I walked out of the building into the bright afternoon sunlight. No dramatic exit, no burning bridges, just another tech worker made redundant by the march of progress. Or so they thought. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, sat on my balcony overlooking the city, and made peace with this chapter ending. I had savings, I had skills, I had options. What I didn't have was the burden of watching my work being dismantled by people who didn't understand its value. I took 2 weeks off, went hiking, caught up on reading, slept past 6 a.m. for the first time in years, started taking those coding courses on quantum computing I'd been putting off, reconnected with industry colleagues. Life continued, and I with it. Then came the text message that changed everything. "Are you available to talk? Urgent matter." Quote, from Dev at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. When I called him back, his voice was hushed, like he was hiding in a closet. Which, as it turned out, he was, specifically, the server room closet at the office. "Thinker Core is failing," he said without preamble. Not obviously, not catastrophically, but insidiously. It's letting through transactions that don't make sense. The validation protocols are breaking down. And nobody knows how to fix it because nobody understands what you built underneath. A part of me, a small petty part I'm not proud of, felt vindicated. But the professional in me was genuinely concerned. Have you raised this with Morgan or Victor? Dev's bitter laugh told me everything. Morgan's blaming, quote, data quality issues and, quote, legacy system incompatibilities. Victor's buying it for now, but the clients are starting to notice. Finance Flow called 3 times today about inconsistencies in their reports. Finance Flow, our biggest client. The one with the complex corporate structure that required special handling. The one whose patterns I had learned to recognize through years of observation. What do you want me to do, Dev? I don't work there anymore. He hesitated. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but there's a meeting tomorrow. Victor's bringing in external consultants to evaluate the system. Amira thinks, we all think, you should be there. I thanked him for the information but made no promises. After hanging up, I sat with my thoughts for a long time. The vindictive option would be to let them flounder, to let Morgan and Victor face the consequences of their decision. The professional option would be to offer assistance. Despite everything, I chose a third path. The next morning, I called Janet Zhao, Finance Flow's chief financial officer and my main contact there for years. We'd always had a good working relationship built on mutual respect and the occasional exchange of gardening tips. Elena, she answered warmly. I was just thinking about you. How are you enjoying your new role? I explained briefly what had happened. Janet's tone shifted from warm to icy. I see. That explains the degradation in service quality we've been experiencing. We've identified 17 discrepancies in the last reporting cycle alone. My team is spending more time double-checking the outputs than they would have spent doing the work manually. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. I wanted to check if there's anything I can do to help, as an independent consultant. There was a thoughtful pause. As it happens, we're evaluating our options. The partnership with your former employer has been valuable. But if they can't maintain the standards we've come to expect, perhaps you could send me a proposal for consulting services? By the time I hung up, I had the outline of a new career path forming in my mind. Not just for Finance Flow, but potentially for other clients who might be experiencing similar issues with automated systems that lacked human oversight. I spent the day crafting a detailed consulting proposal, outlining services focused on human-AI collaboration in financial data management. Not fighting against automation, but enhancing it with expert human judgment. By evening, I had something I was proud of. Something that represented not just what I had been, but what I could become. Just as I was about to email it to Janet, my phone rang. Unknown number. Elena speaking. Elena, it's Victor. I nearly dropped the phone. Victor never called anyone directly. He had people for that. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, he continued, his usual confidence noticeably absent. We need to talk. About Thinker Core. About the situation we're facing. I let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. What situation would that be, Victor? He sighed heavily. I think you know. The system isn't performing as expected. We're seeing anomalies, inconsistencies. Morgan's team is struggling to identify the root causes. We've brought in external consultants, but they're essentially starting from scratch without the institutional knowledge. Translation: Thinker Core was failing, and they needed me to fix it. That sounds challenging, I said neutrally. I wish you luck with resolving it. Elena, Victor's voice took on a pleading tone I'd never heard before. I'm calling to ask if you'd consider coming back, as a consultant, to help us stabilize the system. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. You want me to help fix the AI that replaced me? I made a mistake, he admitted, each word seemingly painful to pronounce. I was too quick to embrace a solution I didn't fully understand. Morgan's benchmarks were based on standardized datasets, not our specific client needs. We need your expertise, Elena. The company needs you. I thought about Dev hiding in the server closet. About Amira and Rishi struggling with a system they hadn't designed. about the clients receiving flawed data. None of this was their fault. "I'm listening," I said finally, "but my consulting rates are significantly higher than my former salary." Victor didn't even hesitate. "Name your price." And that's how, 3 weeks after being laid off, I found myself walking back into the same office building, not as an employee, but as a highly paid consultant, with a 6-month contract to, quote, facilitate AI human integration and knowledge transfer. The atmosphere was different this time. No swaggering Morgan to greet me. She had been reassigned to strategic initiatives, according to Victor's carefully worded explanation. My former team welcomed me like a returning hero, complete with coffee from the good place down the street, not the terrible break room stuff. Victor had arranged a dedicated project room for me, with multiple monitors and priority access to all systems. The message was clear: whatever I needed, I would get. "We need to understand what's happening with the finance flow accounts as soon as possible," Victor said during our first briefing. "They're threatening to terminate their contract if we can't resolve the inconsistencies by the end of the month." I nodded, already mentally mapping out the approach. "I'll need complete access to ThinkerCore's decision logs and the original validation protocols. And I'll need Amira and Dev assigned to my team full-time." "Done," Victor agreed instantly. "Whatever you need." As I suspected, the problems stemmed from ThinkerCore's fundamental inability to recognize the contextual patterns that made finance flow's data unique. The AI had been trained on general financial datasets, not the specific quirks of a multinational conglomerate, with dozens of subsidiaries and complex intercompany transactions. Without human oversight to identify these special cases, the system was applying generic rules that produced technically correct but contextually meaningless results. It took 3 days of intensive analysis to fully diagnose the issues. Another week to design a hybrid solution that preserved ThinkerCore's processing capabilities while reintroducing human oversight at critical decision points. Not full-time manual review, but strategic intervention where judgment and context mattered most. In our progress meeting, Victor looked both relieved and chastened as I walked through the proposed solution. "So ThinkerCore isn't fundamentally flawed," he clarified. "It just needs human collaboration to function optimally with our specific client base." "Exactly," I confirmed. AI excels at processing volume and identifying patterns it's been trained to recognize. But it lacks the contextual understanding and adaptability that comes from years of direct experience with unique client needs. The solution isn't replacing one with the other. It's finding the right balance between them. Victor nodded thoughtfully. "How quickly can we implement these changes?" "We've already started. Amira is reconfiguring the validation protocols today. Dev is modifying the decision trees to flag transactions that require human review. We should have a stable version ready for testing by next week." "And staffing?" Victor asked tentatively. "Will we need to rebuild the team?" The question he was really asking. Would he need to rehire the people who had been let go in the ThinkerCore transition? "Not entirely," I said, "but you will need a core team of data specialists who understand both the technology and the client contexts. I'd recommend bringing back at least 2 of the senior analysts who were transitioned out, and maintaining a smaller permanent team moving forward." It wasn't a complete victory over automation, nor should it have been. Technology had its place, but so did human expertise and judgment. Over the next month, we rebuilt the system from the inside out. Not scrapping ThinkerCore, but enhancing it, teaching it to recognize when it needed human input, creating feedback loops that genuinely improved its performance over time. We developed new protocols for client onboarding that captured the unique aspects of their data structures, ensuring the system had the context it needed to make appropriate decisions. The results spoke for themselves. Processing speeds remained high, but error rates dropped dramatically. Finance flow not only stayed but expanded their contract. Other clients reported improved satisfaction with our reports and analyses. Victor, to his credit, embraced the hybrid approach with the same enthusiasm he had previously reserved for full automation. He even invited me to present our solution at an industry conference, where it was received with significant interest from other companies facing similar challenges with their AI implementations. As my consulting contract neared its end, Victor called me into his office, the same room where, months earlier, Morgan had effectively announced my obsolescence. "I wanted to discuss next steps," he began. "Your contract expires in 3 weeks, but I think we both know the work isn't finished." I nodded. "The system is stable, but there are still refinements to be made, especially as we onboard new clients." "I'd like to offer you a permanent position," Victor said. "Chief of AI Integration. You'd lead a department focused specifically on optimizing the human-AI workflow across all our products. Full autonomy, executive-level compensation, and a seat at the leadership table." I considered the offer. It was generous, certainly more than I had expected when I walked out with my cardboard box months ago. But something had changed in me during my time away. I had glimpsed a different future, one where I wasn't tied to a single company's vision. "I appreciate the offer, Victor, but I've been developing something different." I slid the business plan across his desk. "Augmented intelligence consulting. Specializing in creating effective human-AI collaborations for financial services firms. I already have 3 clients lined up, including Finance Flow." Victor's eyes widened as he scanned the document. "You're starting your own firm." "I am," I confirmed. "And I'd like to propose a different arrangement. Retain my services as a priority consultant for ongoing development. Your team gets the expertise they need, and I get to build something of my own." He studied me with newfound respect. "You're not the same person who left here 3 months ago." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. That person defined herself by a job title. This person defines herself by the value she creates, wherever and however she chooses to create it." Victor extended his hand. "I think we can work something out." As I left his office, I passed the glass-walled conference room where this story began, where Morgan had pronounced the end of human oversight and the dawn of AI supremacy. The room now housed the integrated team I had built, humans and technology working in concert, each enhancing the other's capabilities rather than competing for the same role. Sometimes becoming obsolete is the best thing that can happen to you. It forces you to recognize your true value beyond job descriptions and organizational charts. In my case, it took being replaced by an AI to fully understand what I brought to the table, that no algorithm could replicate, not just technical skills or industry knowledge, but judgment, intuition, and the wisdom that comes only from human experience. The CEO said AI would replace me. Instead, it gave me the push I needed to reinvent myself as something irreplaceable, the bridge between technological capability and human wisdom. And now, companies are paying me $200,000 a year to help them understand what Victor learned the hard way. The future belongs not to AI alone, nor to humans clinging to outdated processes, but to those who can create meaningful collaboration between the two. I still keep that gift certificate for the AI coding bootcamp in my wallet. Not because I need it anymore, but as a reminder that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. It gives you the freedom to exceed everyone's expectations, especially your own. I never expected to find myself consulting on the very technology that had pushed me out the door. But here I was, walking into Nexus Technologies each morning with a consultant badge instead of an employee ID. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially the remaining team members who greeted me with a mixture of relief and apprehension. They needed me, but they also feared becoming the next casualties of automation. My first week back was spent in deep diagnostic mode. I needed to understand exactly how Thinker Core was failing and why. Victor had given me unrestricted access to the system logs, decision matrices, and validation protocols, privileges I hadn't even had as an employee. It was amazing how quickly barriers disappeared when revenue was at stake. "Show me everything," I told Dev and Amira on our first morning together in the project room I'd requisitioned. "I want to see every error report, every client complaint, every deviation from expected outcomes." They exchanged glances before Dev spoke up. "There's something you should know first. Morgan, she didn't just implement Thinker Core. She modified some of your original validation frameworks to make the integration smoother." "Modified how?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Amira pulled up a comparison of code versions on her laptop. She simplified the exception handling for several major clients, including finance flow. Said it was, quote, streamlining redundant protocols. But those exceptions were there for a reason, weren't they? Every single one, I confirmed, scrolling through the changes with growing dismay. Those weren't redundancies. They were safeguards for specific edge cases that occur in complex financial structures. It was worse than I'd thought. Morgan hadn't just replaced me with an AI. She'd deliberately dismantled the protective architecture I'd built to accommodate her one-size-fits-all solution. No wonder finance flow was threatening to walk. The system wasn't just missing subtleties. It was actively misinterpreting their data structure. Show me the last 3 months of finance flow reports, I requested, settling in for a long day. I need to see exactly what's slipping through. What I found confirmed my suspicions. ThinkerCore was missing critical patterns in finance flow's intercompany transactions. Their corporate structure included multiple subsidiaries that often transferred funds between related entities. Perfectly legitimate operations that nonetheless triggered standard fraud detection algorithms unless properly contextualized. My original system had been built to recognize these patterns through a combination of historical data analysis and manually configured exceptions. ThinkerCore, with its generalized approach, was flagging legitimate transactions as suspicious while simultaneously missing actual anomalies that didn't fit its training parameters. This is fixable, I told Victor during our first progress update. But it requires a fundamental rethinking of how ThinkerCore integrates with our client-specific knowledge base. Victor leaned forward, elbows on his desk. What are you proposing? A hybrid system. ThinkerCore handles the heavy lifting, processing transactions, generating baseline reports, identifying standard patterns. But we reintroduce human oversight at critical decision points, particularly for clients with complex needs. Not full-time manual review, but strategic intervention where judgment matters most. That sounds expensive, Victor observed cautiously. More expensive than losing Finance Flow's annual contract worth $3 million? I countered. More expensive than the reputation damage when other clients follow suit? This isn't about undermining ThinkerCore. It's about optimizing it by pairing it with the right human expertise. Victor winced at the mention of Finance Flow's contract value. Point taken. What resources do you need? First, we need to rebuild the client-specific exception libraries that were dismantled. Then we need to create a new interface layer between ThinkerCore and these libraries. Finally, we need to train a small team, maybe 3 to 5 people, who understand both the technology and the unique client contexts. And you think this will resolve the immediate issues with Finance Flow? I nodded confidently. Within 2 weeks, we can have their reports back to the accuracy levels they expect. The full system integration will take longer, but we'll prioritize our biggest clients first. Victor studied me for a moment, then nodded. Make it happen. I assembled a small strike team, Dev and Amira from my old department, plus Zoe, a brilliant system architect who'd somehow survived the ThinkerCore purge. We commandeered a conference room, covered the walls with diagrams and process flows, and set to work rebuilding what had been lost while enhancing it for the future. The first step was triage, identifying which clients were experiencing the most significant issues and prioritizing solutions for them. Finance Flow topped the list, but close behind were Meridian Health, a hospital network with Byzantine billing structures, and Quantum Capital, an investment firm with international transactions that triggered regulatory flags in multiple jurisdictions. For each priority client, I explained to my team, we need to recreate their exception libraries from historical data. Dev, I need you to mine the transaction logs from the past year, before ThinkerCore, and identify patterns that received manual overrides. On it, Dev nodded, already pulling up database queries. Amira, you'll work on the new interface layer, how ThinkerCore will communicate with these exception libraries and when it should flag transactions for human review. What parameters should trigger human intervention? She asked. Start with any transaction that matches a historical pattern requiring override, plus any new pattern that deviates significantly from both the general rules and the client-specific exceptions. We want to catch both known special cases and potential new ones. Zoe raised her hand. And my role? I smiled. You're going to help me design the architecture for long-term sustainability. This can't be a band-aid solution. We need to create a framework that evolves with both the AI capabilities and our clients' changing needs. We worked 14-hour days that first week, fueled by takeout and determination. By Wednesday, we had reconstructed Finance Flow's exception library and begun integrating it with ThinkerCore's decision engine. By Friday, we were running simulations using historical data to test the accuracy of our hybrid approach. The results were promising. Our modified system correctly identified 98.7% of the special cases that had previously required manual intervention, while maintaining ThinkerCore's processing efficiency for standard transactions. It's working, Dev announced, a note of wonder in his voice as he reviewed the simulation outputs. But there's something else I've noticed. He pulled up a comparison chart showing error rates before my departure, during ThinkerCore's solo operation, and under our new hybrid model. The hybrid system is actually outperforming both previous approaches, he observed. It's more accurate than the original manual process and more nuanced than ThinkerCore alone. That makes sense, I explained. We're getting the best of both worlds. Human judgment where it matters most, and AI efficiency where it excels. Plus, we're building feedback loops that allow the system to learn from human interventions. The next hurdle was getting buy-in from the client. I scheduled a presentation with Janet Zhao at Finance Flow, prepared to face skepticism after months of deteriorating service. Elena, Janet greeted me, her expression guarded. I was surprised to hear you were back at Nexus. In a consulting capacity, I clarified. Specifically to address the issues you've been experiencing with the new system. She arched an eyebrow. The system that replaced you? Life is full of ironies, I acknowledged with a small smile. But I'm here today to show you how we're resolving those issues and creating something better than what existed before. Over the next hour, I walked Janet and her team through our diagnostic findings and proposed solution. I didn't sugarcoat the problems or make excuses for what had happened. Instead, I focused on the path forward, how our hybrid approach would restore the accuracy they depended on while maintaining improved processing times. We've already reconstructed your company's exception library, I explained, showing examples of correctly handled special cases in our simulation. And we're creating a system that learns from each human intervention, gradually reducing the need for manual oversight, while maintaining accuracy. Janet listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed her deep understanding of her company's financial operations. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, considering. You're essentially saying that the all-AI approach was fundamentally flawed for a company with our complexity. I'm saying it was premature, I corrected carefully. AI is incredibly powerful, but it's still developing. The most effective solutions right now pair AI capabilities with human expertise, especially for clients with unique needs like Finance Flow. And Nexus now acknowledges this? Victor has approved this new direction and committed the necessary resources, I confirmed. We're prioritizing your account for the upgrade, with implementation beginning immediately if you approve. Janet tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. I appreciate your candor, Elena, and I've always valued your understanding of our business. Let's proceed with the implementation, but with weekly progress reviews and a 30-day evaluation period. It wasn't unconditional trust, but it was a chance, which was more than Victor had any right to expect after the ThinkerCore debacle. Back at Nexus, we kicked our implementation plan into high gear. The first real-world test came the following week when Finance Flow's monthly transaction data arrived for processing. We ran it through our hybrid system, with the team standing by to monitor results and intervene if necessary. I watched nervously as the data flowed through the pipeline, first processed by ThinkerCore's core algorithms, then passed through our new exception handling layer, with potentially problematic transactions flagged for human review. Of the 12,483 transactions processed, only 37 required human intervention, a manageable number that wouldn't create bottlenecks. This could actually work, Zoe murmured, watching the dashboard as successfully processed transactions accumulated. It will work, I said, with more confidence than I felt. But the real test will be Finance Flow's feedback on the report quality. We didn't have to wait long. Janet called the next day after reviewing the preliminary outputs. "This is what we've been missing," she said, the relief evident in her voice. "The anomaly detection is working correctly again, and the contextual handling of our intercompany transfers is spot on. Whatever you did, it's working." One success didn't mean the war was won, but it was a crucial battle. Over the next 2 weeks, we repeated the process with Meridian Health and Quantum Capital, rebuilding their exception libraries and creating client-specific AI augmentation protocols. The results were consistently positive. Not perfect, but dramatically improved from ThinkerCore's solo performance. Victor was ecstatic when I presented the 1-month progress report. Not only had we stemmed the tide of client complaints, but early feedback indicated increased satisfaction with the enhanced reports and analyses. "This is extraordinary work, Elena," he said, reviewing the performance metrics. "You've taken a crisis and turned it into an opportunity for innovation." I accepted the compliment with a nod, but couldn't resist adding, "It could have been an evolution rather than a crisis if we'd approached automation as augmentation rather than replacement from the beginning." Victor had the grace to look chagrined. A lesson learned at considerable expense. Which brings me to my next question. Would you consider extending your consulting contract? We still have several clients to transition to the new system. "I'm open to discussing terms," I replied, "but I have some conditions." "I'm listening." "First, I want to formalize the hybrid approach as Nexus's official data management philosophy, not just a temporary fix. That means documented procedures, dedicated training, and a commitment to maintaining the human component." Victor nodded. "Reasonable. What else?" "Second, I want to bring back at least 2 of the senior analysts who were let go during the ThinkerCore transition. Their institutional knowledge is valuable, and they deserve the opportunity." This request made him shift uncomfortably, but he didn't refuse outright. "I'll need to review budget allocations, but I can see the business case for it." "Anything else?" "Finally, I want to develop a proper knowledge transfer program. Not just documentation, but actual mentoring to ensure the context behind decisions is preserved. This system works because it captures human judgment. We need to make sure that judgment continues to evolve." "You're essentially proposing a complete restructuring of our data operations philosophy," Victor observed. "I'm proposing a sustainable path forward," I corrected. "One that recognizes the value of both technological advancement and human expertise." After a moment's consideration, Victor extended his hand. "Draft the proposal. If it's as well conceived as your technical solution, you'll have my full support." As I walked back to my team, I reflected on how dramatically my position had shifted in just a few months. I'd gone from redundant employee to essential consultant, from fighting for my job to negotiating the future direction of the company's technology strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. It had taken the failure of an AI to fully demonstrate the value of human judgment. That evening, as we celebrated our progress with drinks at a nearby bar, Dev raised his glass in a toast. "To the hybrid revolution, where humans and AI learn to play nice together. To knowing your worth," Amira added, "even when others don't see it. To second chances," I concluded, "and building something better than before." The next phase of our work focused on formalizing the hybrid approach into a sustainable system. This meant creating not just technical documentation, but a philosophical framework for how human judgment and AI processing should interact across different client scenarios. We developed a tiered intervention model: Level 1 for routine transactions that AI could handle independently, Level 2 for cases requiring rule-based exceptions that could be programmatically defined, and Level 3 for complex situations demanding human review and contextual understanding. The key, I explained to the expanded team, which now included Taylor and Rohan, the rehired senior analysts, is creating clear criteria for when transactions move between levels. We want ThinkerCore handling as much as possible autonomously, but with intelligent escalation when needed. "And how do we ensure the AI actually learns from the human interventions?" Taylor asked. She had returned with understandable skepticism about working alongside the technology that had previously displaced her. "That's where our feedback loop comes in," I explained. "When you make a judgment call on a Level 3 case, you'll document your reasoning in structured format. The system will incorporate that logic into its decision matrix for similar future cases. Over time, some Level 3 cases will become Level 2 as the patterns become clear enough to codify. So we're essentially teaching the AI to think more like us? Rohan clarified. Within specific domains, yes. We're not trying to create artificial general intelligence here. We're creating a specialized system that combines computational power with human contextual understanding. The AI handles volume and pattern recognition. We handle nuance and judgment. As we implemented this framework across more clients, an interesting pattern emerged. The system wasn't just maintaining quality, it was improving it. Error rates declined more than we'd projected. Processing times decreased as fewer cases required human intervention, and client satisfaction scores began trending upward. We've created something genuinely new here, Zoe observed during one of our review sessions. Not just a band-aid on a broken system, but a better approach than either pure human or pure AI processing. She was right. What had started as crisis management had evolved into innovation. The hybrid system we'd built was attracting attention beyond our immediate client base. Industry publications began reaching out for interviews about our human-in-the-loop approach to financial data management. Victor, ever attuned to marketing opportunities, suggested we brand the new system Augment AI, he proposed during a strategy meeting, emphasizing that we're enhancing artificial intelligence with human expertise, not replacing one with the other. The name stuck, and soon Augment AI became Nexus Technologies' flagship product. My consulting role expanded from technical implementation to strategic advisor, helping shape the narrative around human-AI collaboration in financial services. As my original 6-month contract neared its end, I found myself at another crossroads. Victor had made it clear he wanted me to stay on indefinitely, even offering a C-suite position, Chief Innovation Officer, with compensation that dwarfed my previous salary. You've transformed how we approach technology, he argued. We need your vision to guide us forward. It was tempting. The validation, the influence, the financial security, all things I'd worked toward throughout my career. But something had changed in me during these months of independence. I discovered I valued my autonomy as much as I valued recognition. I appreciate the offer, I told Victor during our discussion. But I think I can create more value as an independent consultant than as an executive tied to a single company's agenda. He looked genuinely disappointed. You're turning down a 7-figure compensation package to remain freelance? I'm choosing flexibility and impact over title and security, I clarified. I've been approached by 3 other financial services firms wanting to implement similar hybrid systems. There's an industry-wide need that I'm uniquely positioned to address. So you're going to help our competitors replicate what we've built? He asked, a note of alarm in his voice. I shook my head. I'm going to help the industry evolve toward more effective human-AI collaboration. Nexus will always be the pioneer in this space, with the most mature implementation. But the approach itself should spread. It's better for everyone, companies, clients, and the professionals who might otherwise be sidelined by premature automation. After some negotiation, we reached a compromise. I would maintain a priority consulting relationship with Nexus, ensuring their system remained cutting-edge, while pursuing independent projects with non-competing firms. Victor wasn't thrilled, but he recognized it was better than losing my input entirely. As I packed up my project room on the final day of my full-time engagement, Amira stopped by. So you're really leaving again, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Not leaving, just transitioning, I corrected. I'll still be involved, just not daily. She nodded thoughtfully. You know, when they brought in ThinkerCore and pushed you out, I was terrified I'd be next. Now I'm leading the Level 2 exception team and teaching the AI how to think better. It's not the future I expected, but it's actually more interesting. That's the thing about technological disruption, I replied. It rarely plays out the way the evangelists predict. The most valuable skill isn't coding or data science. It's adaptability and critical thinking. Stepping out of Nexus Technologies with my consultant badge for the last time felt like graduating rather than leaving. The security guard at the front desk, Jerome, who had watched me trudge out with my cardboard box of belongings just months earlier, gave me a knowing smile and a thumbs up. Word had spread about the woman who'd been replaced by AI, only to return and save the company from its own technological hubris. "Ms. Elena, they're gonna miss you around here," Jerome called as I walked toward the exit. I turned back with a smile. "I'll still be around, just not every day." "Well, whenever you do come back, I'll have your visitor badge ready," he replied with a wink. That small interaction captured something essential about my journey. I hadn't just reclaimed my professional standing, I'd transformed it into something more powerful. The badge clipped to my blazer might have changed from employee to consultant, but my influence had expanded far beyond what any job title could convey. The next morning, I sat at the small desk in my apartment that had served as my command center during the early days of unemployment. The same desk where I'd updated my resume with shaking hands, wondering if 7 years of expertise had suddenly become worthless. Now it was the launchpad for Elena Michaels Consulting, specializing in human AI integration for financial services. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. A video call with Westbrook Financial, a mid-sized investment firm facing challenges similar to what Nexus had experienced. They'd implemented an automated compliance system that was technically impressive but contextually oblivious, missing the nuanced patterns that could indicate either innovation or fraud in complex trading strategies. As I prepared for the call, I reflected on how quickly my professional narrative had evolved. 3 months ago, I was a cautionary tale of technological displacement. Today, I was a sought-after expert in the emerging field of augmented intelligence. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being replaced by AI had ultimately made me more valuable, not less. The Westbrook call went even better than I'd anticipated. Their CTO, a thoughtful woman named Daria, who had resisted the all-or-nothing approach to automation, had been following our work at Nexus through industry publications. "Your hybrid model addresses exactly what we've been struggling with," she explained. "Our compliance AI is catching all the obvious red flags, but missing contextual anomalies that an experienced analyst would immediately question." "That's the fundamental limitation of current AI systems," I agreed. "They're exceptional at identifying patterns they've been trained to recognize but struggle with novel situations or contextual judgment. The solution isn't replacing the AI, it's augmenting it with human expertise at strategic intervention points." By the end of the call, we had outlined a 3-month project to implement a hybrid compliance system, similar to what we'd built at Nexus, but tailored to Westbrook's specific regulatory environment and client base. "I have to ask," Daria said as we were wrapping up, "aren't you concerned about eventually making yourself obsolete? If the AI keeps learning from human interventions, won't it eventually close the gap?" It was a perceptive question, one I'd wrestled with myself. "That's certainly the goal in theory," I acknowledged. "But financial environments aren't static. Regulations evolve, market conditions shift, and creative humans continuously develop new financial instruments and strategies. The need for contextual judgment adapts alongside these changes. The specific tasks requiring human oversight will evolve, but the principle of human-AI collaboration remains constant." Daria nodded thoughtfully. "So it's not about preserving specific job functions, but about continually redefining how humans add value in an increasingly automated landscape." Exactly. The most successful professionals won't be those who resist automation or those who blindly embrace it. They'll be those who learn to dance with it, understanding both its capabilities and its limitations. As I ended the call, I felt a surge of clarity about my new professional identity. I wasn't just helping companies fix broken AI implementations. I was helping reshape the relationship between human expertise and artificial intelligence, moving from a narrative of replacement to one of enhancement. My consulting practice grew rapidly over the next few months. Word spread through the financial services industry about the AI whisperer, who could bridge the gap between technological promises and practical realities. Each new client brought unique challenges that expanded my understanding of where and how human judgment remained essential in an increasingly automated world. At Global Trade, a multinational payment processing company, the issue wasn't compliance but customer exception handling. Their AI customer service system was efficient for standard transactions, but struggled with complex dispute resolutions that required cultural context and nuanced communication. The system keeps misclassifying certain types of disputes based on rigid categorization rules, explained Marcus, their head of customer experience. What looks like fraud to the algorithm might actually be a cultural misunderstanding about transaction timing or documentation requirements. We developed a tiered response system, similar to the one at Nexus. Automatic handling for clear-cut cases, rule-based processing for common exceptions, and human review for situations requiring cultural context or judgment. The results were remarkable. Customer satisfaction scores rose by 18% in the first quarter after implementation, while the cost per resolved dispute actually decreased as human agents focused on complex cases where they added the most value. Each successful project built not just my reputation, but my conviction that we were pioneering a more sustainable approach to technological advancement, one that recognized the distinct values of both human and artificial intelligence, rather than treating them as competitors in a zero-sum game. 6 months into my consulting practice, I received an unexpected email from a name I recognized immediately, Morgan Chen, the AI consultant who had orchestrated my replacement at Nexus. The subject line read simply, "A conversation?" My finger hovered over the delete button momentarily before curiosity won out. The message was brief and surprisingly humble. "Elena, I've been following your work on hybrid intelligence systems with interest. The implementation at Nexus has become a case study in effective human-AI integration. I wonder if you would be open to a conversation about potential collaboration. My technical expertise, combined with your insight into human-AI cooperation, could be powerful. Coffee sometime?" The old me might have responded with righteous indignation or ignored the message entirely. But my perspective had evolved alongside my career. I was no longer the person whose identity had been threatened by automation. I had transcended that narrative. I replied with a simple acceptance, suggesting a time and place, a neutral coffee shop midway between our offices. When I arrived, Morgan was already there, looking simultaneously the same and different. The sleek, confident exterior remained, but the triumphant gleam in her eye had been replaced by something more contemplative. "Thank you for meeting me," she began after we'd exchanged awkward greetings. "I imagine I was the last person you expected to hear from." "I admit I was surprised," I acknowledged, stirring my latte. "Last time we interacted, you were explaining why my job was obsolete." Morgan winced slightly. "About that, I owe you an apology. My approach at Nexus was fundamentally flawed. I was so focused on the technical capabilities of AI that I dismissed the importance of institutional knowledge and human judgment. The results speak for themselves." Her admission caught me off guard. I'd expected defensiveness or rationalization, not a straightforward acknowledgement of error. "What changed your perspective?" I asked. "Failure is a powerful teacher," she replied with a rueful smile. "After the Nexus implementation started unraveling, my firm put me on smaller projects, mostly technical optimizations, rather than full-scale transformations. It gave me time to reflect on what went wrong. I started researching more collaborative approaches to AI integration and kept encountering your work." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee before continuing. "You've pioneered something genuinely innovative, not just technically, but philosophically. You've reframed the narrative from replacement to partnership. It's exactly the evolution our industry needs." I studied her, searching for signs of insincerity but finding none. "And now you want to collaborate?" "I think we have complementary expertise," she said. "My background is in AI architecture and machine learning optimization. Yours is in domain expertise and human AI integration. Together, we could develop more sophisticated hybrid systems than either of us could create independently." The proposal was unexpected, but intriguing. Morgan had undeniable technical brilliance, even if her previous approach had been misguided. And there was something poetically appropriate about collaborating with the person who had once engineered my obsolescence. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. "A joint consulting venture focused on next-generation human-AI integration," she explained, pulling out a tablet with a preliminary business plan. "Not just retrofitting human oversight onto existing AI systems, but designing integrated solutions from the ground up. Systems that leverage both artificial and human intelligence by design rather than as an afterthought." As she walked me through her vision, I found myself reluctantly impressed. Morgan had clearly done her homework, analyzing the limitations of current approaches and identifying opportunities for deeper integration. Her technical proposals were sophisticated, incorporating feedback mechanisms and learning protocols that would enhance both human and AI performance over time. "This is actually quite compelling," I admitted when she finished. "But I have one fundamental question. Do you genuinely believe in the value of human expertise now? Or is this just a pragmatic pivot based on market demand?" Morgan considered the question seriously before responding. "Both, in a way. I've always pursued optimal solutions. I believed AI alone was that solution, but evidence proved otherwise. The hybrid approach isn't just politically palatable, it's functionally superior for complex domains. So yes, I've genuinely come to appreciate the value of human judgment, not as a nostalgic holdover, but as an essential component of effective systems." Her answer satisfied me more than I expected. It acknowledged the reality I'd been championing, without pretending to abandon the technologist's commitment to advancement. It wasn't about preserving jobs for sentimental reasons. It was about creating the most effective systems possible. "I'm not making any commitments today," I said finally, "but I'm open to exploring the possibility. Send me a formal proposal and we'll continue the conversation." Morgan's face brightened with cautious optimism. "That's more than fair. Thank you for hearing me out, Elena. Regardless of what happens next, I wanted you to know that I've learned from my mistakes at Nexus. Your work has been a significant part of that education." As we parted ways, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. The woman who had once been the face of my professional displacement was now acknowledging the value of my approach. More than that, she was proposing to build upon it rather than replace it, a perfect metaphor for the very philosophy I had been advocating. I mulled over Morgan's proposal over the following week, discussing it with trusted colleagues and mentors. The business case was solid. Our combined expertise would indeed create a more comprehensive offering than either of us could provide independently. The question was whether I could truly collaborate with someone who had once so dismissively declared my skills obsolete. In the end, it was Janet Zhao from Finance Flow who helped clarify my thinking during one of our regular check-in calls. "Do you remember what you told me when we were implementing the hybrid system?" she asked after I'd explained Morgan's proposal. "You said the future belongs to those who can see the unique values of both human and artificial intelligence. If you believe that's true, then working with someone who brings different strengths seems consistent with your philosophy." "But she tried to replace me with an algorithm," I pointed out. "And now she wants to learn from you," Janet countered. "Isn't that growth exactly what you've been advocating? That we all need to evolve our understanding of how humans and technology can work together? Besides, there's a certain poetic justice in partnering with the person who once underestimated you." She had a point. Rejecting collaboration because of past grievances would contradict the very principles I had been championing. The future I envisioned wasn't about proving technologists wrong. It was about creating integrated systems that leveraged the best of both human and artificial capabilities. I agreed to a trial project with Morgan, a joint consultation for a regional bank implementing a new fraud detection system. We would design the architecture together, combining her expertise in AI optimization with my approach to human-AI integration. Our collaboration wasn't without tension. Morgan's instinct was still to automate everything possible, while I pushed for strategic human intervention points. But our disagreements were productive, forcing each of us to articulate and sometimes reconsider our assumptions. The system could handle these cases automatically if we incorporated more historical context, Morgan argued during one planning session, pointing to a category of transactions we had designated for human review. "It's not just about historical context," I countered. "It's about subjective judgment and institutional knowledge that can't be fully encoded. Some decisions require understanding the why behind patterns, not just recognizing the patterns themselves." We ultimately settled on a compromise, developing a more sophisticated context engine that could handle a larger subset of cases automatically while preserving human review for truly complex scenarios. The resulting system was more efficient than my original design and more nuanced than Morgan's AI-centric approach would have been. When we presented our joint solution to the client, their chief risk officer was visibly impressed. "This addresses exactly what we've been struggling to articulate," she said. "We wanted the efficiency of automation without losing the judgment that keeps us from making catastrophic errors." You've shown us how to achieve both. As our trial project concluded successfully, Morgan and I met to discuss next steps. We'd proven we could work together effectively, and client feedback had confirmed the value of our combined approach. I'm thinking of establishing a formal partnership, Morgan said over dinner at a quiet restaurant near her office. Symbiotic Systems, specializing in designed integration of human and artificial intelligence. Equal partners, complementary expertise. I considered the proposal seriously. A year ago, the idea of partnering with the woman who had engineered my replacement would have seemed absurd. But professional identities, like technologies, evolve. I was no longer defined by my role at Nexus, just as Morgan was no longer defined by her former AI replaces humans perspective. Equal partners, I repeated thoughtfully. From replacement to partnership, there's a certain symmetry to it. Is that a yes? Morgan asked, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her polished exterior. It's a conditional yes, I clarified. I want clearly defined roles that respect our distinct areas of expertise. And I want our philosophical approach to be explicitly collaborative, rather than replacement-oriented. This isn't just about business structure, it's about the message we send to the market. Morgan nodded eagerly. Absolutely. That's exactly what makes this partnership valuable, our complementary perspectives and shared commitment to integration rather than replacement. As we sketched the outline of our new venture on a napkin, I reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought me to this moment. Being told I was obsolete had ultimately led me to pioneer a new approach that demonstrated the enduring value of human expertise. Now I was preparing to partner with the very person who had once dismissed that expertise, not as a compromise, but as a logical extension of my own philosophy. The narrative had come full circle, but the ending was neither a triumph of humans over machines, nor machines over humans. It was the emergence of a more nuanced understanding that true advancement comes not from replacement but from thoughtful integration, recognizing the distinct strengths of both human and artificial intelligence. 3 weeks later, Symbiotic Systems launched with a manifesto that captured this philosophy. The future of intelligence isn't artificial or human, it's symbiotic. Systems that integrate both forms of intelligence will outperform those that rely exclusively on either. Our mission is to design, implement, and optimize these integrated systems, creating value that neither humans nor algorithms could achieve independently. Our first major client was, ironically, Nexus Technologies. Victor had followed my post-Nexus career with interest and recognized the potential of our combined approach. He wanted Symbiotic Systems to develop the next generation of augment AI, incorporating Morgan's technical innovations with the human-centered philosophy I had championed. As we presented our proposal in the same boardroom where Morgan had once announced my obsolescence, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Victor glanced between us with a bemused expression. If someone had told me a year ago that you two would be standing here as business partners, I'd have questioned their sanity, he remarked. But I have to admit, the concept makes perfect sense. You've each evolved your thinking in opposite directions and met in a more balanced middle. That's essentially our value proposition, I replied with a smile. Integration rather than polarization. Finding the optimal balance between human judgment and artificial intelligence. Well, I'm sold, Victor said, extending his hand. Nexus would be honored to be Symbiotic Systems' flagship client. Let's build the future together. Humans and AI working as partners rather than competitors. As we sealed the agreement, I caught Morgan's eye across the table. There was a moment of shared understanding, an acknowledgement of how far we had both come from our initial positions. She had learned to value human expertise. I had embraced the transformative potential of AI. Together, we had transcended the replacement narrative to create something more powerful than either of us could have envisioned alone. The CEO had said I would replace me. Instead, it had catalyzed a professional evolution that led me not just to a $200,000 consulting fee, but to co-founding a venture that was redefining the relationship between human and artificial intelligence. Sometimes becoming obsolete is just the first step toward becoming indispensable in a new and unexpected way. 2 years into our partnership at Symbiotic Systems, Morgan and I stood on stage at Tech Fusion, the premier conference for emerging technologies in financial services. The audience, A mix of executives, technologists, and industry analysts watched attentively as we presented the results of our latest implementation at Global Financial Partners, a Fortune 500 company that had previously lost millions to a purely algorithmic risk assessment system. The numbers speak for themselves, Morgan explained, gesturing to the graph behind us. After implementing our hybrid intelligence framework, false positives in fraud detection decreased by 63%, while successful identification of actual fraud attempts increased by 38%. Processing efficiency improved by 27%, even with the introduction of human review stages. I stepped forward to add the human element to these impressive statistics. But perhaps most telling is this metric, I said, highlighting a different section of the dashboard. Employee satisfaction in the risk management department has increased by 42%. These aren't people clinging to outdated jobs. They're professionals whose expertise has been amplified rather than replaced, who now focus on complex judgment calls where they add the most value while the AI handles routine processing. A hand rose from the middle of the audience. "This all sounds promising," said a skeptical-looking man in a crisp suit. "But aren't you just delaying the inevitable? As AI continues to advance, won't those human intervention points eventually become unnecessary?" It was a question we'd heard countless times, always rooted in the persistent binary thinking that human and artificial intelligence were locked in a zero-sum competition. Morgan and I exchanged a glance, and she nodded for me to take this one. "That perspective assumes that the landscape itself remains static," I explained. "But financial systems, regulatory requirements, and human behavior are constantly evolving. New financial instruments emerge, new fraud techniques develop, new market conditions arise. Human creativity, both constructive and destructive, ensures that context and judgment remain essential, even as the specific tasks requiring that judgment shift over time." Morgan stepped in to add the technical perspective. "We're not building systems where humans clean up after imperfect AI, or where AI is hamstrung by human limitations. We're designing symbiotic relationships where each enhances the other's capabilities. Our most advanced implementations actually show the AI and human components evolving together, with each becoming more sophisticated through the interaction." The questions continued for 20 minutes, ranging from technical details to philosophical implications. As the session concluded, the conference organizer announced that our presentation had been voted Most Valuable Insights by attendees through the event app, a validation of how far the industry had come in embracing the hybrid approach we had pioneered. As we stepped off stage, a young woman approached us, her expression earnest beneath a shock of blue-streaked hair. "That was incredible," she said. "I'm Zara, I lead data architecture at Finstart. We're a smaller firm, probably couldn't afford your services, but your approach resonates with exactly what I've been trying to articulate to our leadership." I smiled, recognizing my former self in her enthusiasm and frustration. "We actually have a knowledge-sharing program for emerging companies," I told her. "Not full implementation, but strategic guidance to help you develop your own hybrid framework. Morgan started it last year." Morgan nodded. "The industry needs more voices championing this approach, not just at enterprise level, but across the ecosystem. Send me an email, and we'll set something up." As Zara walked away with visible excitement, Morgan gave me a knowing look. "Another convert to the cause?" "She didn't need converting," I replied. "She already understood the value of human-AI collaboration. She just needed validation and tools to implement it." That evening, at the conference gala dinner, we found ourselves seated at the VIP table alongside industry leaders and innovators. To my right was Daniel Kavita, the newly appointed Chief Technology Officer of the Federal Reserve, known for his progressive views on financial technology regulation. "Your work has been influential in our thinking about AI governance," he commented as we discussed the challenges of regulating increasingly sophisticated financial systems. "The purely algorithmic approach created black boxes that even their designers couldn't fully explain. Your hybrid model offers both efficiency and accountability." "That's been one of the unexpected benefits," I agreed. "When you design systems with human judgment as an integral component rather than an afterthought, you naturally create more transparent and explainable processes." "The regulatory implications are profound," Daniel continued. We're drafting new guidelines that will essentially require some version of human oversight for critical financial systems, not as a checkbox exercise, but as a fundamental design principle. Morgan leaned forward with interest. That aligns perfectly with our philosophy. The most effective regulation won't try to hold back technological advancement. It will ensure that advancement includes appropriate guardrails. As dinner progressed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. What had begun as a personal crisis, being replaced by an algorithm that couldn't actually do my job, had evolved into a movement reshaping how an entire industry thought about technological advancement. The woman who had once proclaimed my obsolescence was now my business partner and friend, championing a vision where human expertise remained valuable precisely because it complemented, rather than competed with artificial intelligence. The following morning, as Morgan and I were preparing for our workshop session, my phone buzzed with a news alert. I nearly dropped it when I saw the headline, "Thinker Core files for bankruptcy amid failed implementations and lawsuits." "Morgan," I called across the hotel suite we were using as our prep room. "Have you seen this?" She looked up from her laptop, eyebrows raised. "Thinker Core? Isn't that the AI system that replaced me at Nexus?" I confirmed, quickly scanning the article. "Apparently they've been struggling for months. Multiple clients filed lawsuits over failed implementations, and they couldn't secure additional funding to stay afloat." Morgan moved to read over my shoulder, her expression growing somber. "This was always the risk of overselling AI capabilities. Promise perfect automation, deliver flawed implementation, lose client trust. It's a death spiral." The article detailed how Thinker Core had continued promoting their fully automated compliance and risk management solutions, even as evidence mounted that their systems couldn't handle the contextual complexity of financial data without human oversight. They had doubled down on the replacement narrative, rather than adapting to the emerging consensus around hybrid approaches. "I don't feel as vindicated as I might have expected," I admitted as we finished reading. "It's more sad. Think of all the value that could have been created if they'd been willing to evolve their thinking." Morgan nodded thoughtfully. "There's a lesson here for all of us in the tech sector. The companies that survive won't be those with the most aggressive AI implementations. They'll be those that most intelligently integrate AI with human capabilities." Our workshop that afternoon was even more impactful in light of the Thinker Core news, which had rippled through the conference. The room was packed beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and sitting in the aisles as we guided participants through the principles of designing effective human-AI collaboration. "The goal isn't to preserve specific job functions," I explained as we worked through a case study. "It's to continuously redefine how humans add value as technological capabilities evolve. This requires a fundamental shift in how we think about work, moving from static job descriptions to dynamic roles defined by where human judgment creates the most value at any given time." "And from the technical side," Morgan added, "it means designing AI systems that are explicitly built to collaborate with humans rather than replace them. This includes transparency in decision-making, clear communication of confidence levels, and interfaces that facilitate effective human intervention when needed." As the workshop concluded, the conference director approached with an unexpected proposal. "The response to your sessions has been overwhelming," she said. "We'd like to create a dedicated track for human-AI collaboration at next year's conference, with Symbiotic Systems as the anchor presenter. Would you be interested in helping us shape that program?" It was yet another sign that our approach was becoming mainstream, moving from a contrarian position to an organizing principle for the future of work in our industry. Of course, we accepted enthusiastically. That evening, as we celebrated the successful conclusion of the conference with a quiet dinner, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Is this Elena Michaels?" asked a voice I vaguely recognized. "Yes, speaking." "Elena, this is Victor Chen from Nexus Technologies. I'm not sure if you remember me." I nearly laughed at the absurdity of him thinking I might have forgotten the CEO who had replaced me with an AI system. "Of course I remember you, Victor. It's been a while." "Indeed it has," he replied, a note of humility in his voice that hadn't been there during our previous interactions. "I've been following your success with Symbiotic Systems. Very impressive work." Thank you, I said, wondering what could be prompting this call after nearly 3 years of silence. What can I do for you? There was a slight hesitation before he continued. I'm sure you've seen the news about ThinkerCore. We were fortunate to have moved away from their platform thanks to your early intervention, but many of our competitors weren't so lucky. There's a significant opportunity emerging as these companies look for alternatives. Now, I understood the purpose of his call, and you're thinking Nexus could position itself to capture that market. Exactly, Victor confirmed. But to do that effectively, we need to significantly enhance our Augment AI platform. The team has done well maintaining what you built, but we need to leap forward, not just maintain. We need symbiotic systems. I glanced at Morgan, who was watching my side of the conversation with evident curiosity. What exactly are you proposing, Victor? A major implementation project, rebuilding Augment AI from the ground up with your hybrid intelligence architecture. Full creative control, premium rates, and potential equity in a new subsidiary we're creating, focused on human AI financial solutions. It was a compelling offer, not just financially but strategically. Nexus had extensive market reach and client relationships that could accelerate the adoption of our approach. And there was a certain poetic justice in returning to transform the company that had once deemed my skills obsolete. This sounds interesting, I acknowledged, but I'd need to discuss it with my partner. Can I call you tomorrow? Of course, Victor agreed. Take the time you need. This would be a significant engagement for both our companies. After ending the call, I explained the situation to Morgan, whose initial skepticism gave way to strategic interest as she considered the possibilities. Nexus has the client base and infrastructure we lack, she mused. And they've already embraced the hybrid approach in principle, if not in its most advanced form. It could be an ideal showcase for our latest innovations. There's also the personal angle, I admitted. The chance to transform the company that once pushed me out, not as an employee, but as a highly paid consultant with creative control. Morgan smiled knowingly. The ultimate validation. But beyond that, it's a genuine opportunity to scale our impact. If we can rebuild Nexus's platform with our architecture, it could become the industry standard. After thorough discussion and careful consideration of our existing commitments, we decided to accept Victor's proposal with specific conditions regarding project scope, creative control, and compensation structure. The financial terms were unprecedented: a $2 million consulting contract plus potential equity in the new subsidiary. When I called Victor the next day to accept conditionally, he was ecstatic. This is exactly what Nexus needs right now, he said. The market is finally recognizing what you understood years ago, that effective financial systems require both artificial and human intelligence working in concert. It's interesting how perspectives evolve, I observed, unable to resist noting the irony. 3 years ago, the prevailing wisdom was that AI would simply replace human judgment in financial services. Victor had the grace to acknowledge his role in that flawed narrative. We all got caught up in the hype cycle. The promise of perfect automation was seductive. Lower costs, higher efficiency, fewer human complications. What we didn't understand was that removing human judgment didn't eliminate complications. It just pushed them downstream in ways we couldn't anticipate. That's precisely the insight that launched Symbiotic Systems, I replied. Not fighting against automation, but ensuring it enhances rather than replaces human expertise. I'm glad Nexus has embraced that philosophy. Thanks to your initial work with us, Victor said. You showed us a better path forward even when we weren't fully ready to see it. 2 weeks later, Morgan and I returned to Nexus Technologies for our initial project meeting. Walking through those familiar glass doors felt surreal, like revisiting a past life but with an entirely different status and perspective. The receptionist did a double take when she saw me, clearly remembering the circumstances of my departure. "Welcome back, Ms. Michaels," she said, with a smile that held both recognition and respect. "Mr. Chen is waiting for you in the executive conference room." As we rode the elevator to the top floor, an area I had rarely accessed as an employee, Morgan squeezed my arm supportively. "Full circle moment?" "More like an upward spiral," I replied. Same location, but entirely different position. The executive conference room was a far cry from the standard meeting spaces I'd frequented during my employment. All polished wood, ergonomic chairs, and panoramic city views. Victor greeted us warmly. accompanied by his new Chief Innovation Officer and several senior technical leaders. "Before we begin," Victor said once introductions were complete, "I want to acknowledge something important. Elena, when you worked here, we failed to recognize the full value of your expertise. We got caught up in technological promises without understanding the crucial role of human judgment in our systems. The fact that you're returning as a highly paid consultant to help us rebuild what you once created is a powerful lesson in both business and human terms." It was a more direct acknowledgement than I had expected, a public recognition of the flawed thinking that had led to my displacement. I nodded appreciatively, neither dismissing the significance of his statement nor dwelling on past grievances. "The technology landscape has evolved significantly since then," I replied diplomatically. "We've all learned important lessons about the optimal relationship between artificial and human intelligence. Today, we have an opportunity to build something that leverages those insights, not just patching the current system, but creating a truly integrated platform that could define the industry standard going forward." With that bridge between past and future established, we dove into the technical discussions. Over the next 4 hours, Morgan and I outlined our vision for rebuilding Augment AI using our latest hybrid intelligence architecture, incorporating advanced machine learning capabilities while strategically preserving human judgment points, where contextual understanding remained crucial. The Nexus team was engaged and enthusiastic, asking insightful questions and building on our ideas with their own domain expertise. It was clear that the company culture had evolved significantly. No longer chasing automation at any cost, but seeking thoughtful integration of technological and human capabilities. As the meeting concluded, Victor walked us to the elevator, continuing our conversation about implementation timelines and resource requirements. Just before the doors opened, he paused with an expression of genuine curiosity. "I have to ask, do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out if we hadn't brought in Thinker Core? If we had recognized the value of your approach from the beginning?" I considered the question seriously before responding. "Honestly, I'm not sure I would have developed the hybrid architecture if I hadn't experienced being replaced by an inadequate AI system. Sometimes disruption, even painful disruption, is necessary for innovation. What matters is how we respond to it." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "You've certainly responded remarkably well. From laid-off employee to industry thought leader commanding premium consulting rates. It's quite a transformation." "The key was refusing to accept the prevailing narrative," I explained as we stepped into the elevator. "When everyone was saying AI would replace human expertise, I looked deeper and saw that the real opportunity was in integration, not replacement. The companies that understand that distinction are the ones that will thrive in this new landscape." As the elevator descended, I felt a profound sense of closure and new beginning simultaneously. The journey from that devastating meeting where Morgan had announced my obsolescence to returning as a highly paid consultant, transforming the company's approach, had been challenging. Painful at times, but ultimately transformative in ways I could never have anticipated. The CEO had said AI would replace me. Instead, it had catalyzed a professional evolution that led me to pioneer a new approach to human-AI collaboration, co-found a successful consulting practice, and ultimately return to transform the very company that had once dismissed my value, this time with a $1.2 million contract and the industry-wide recognition that validated my vision. Sometimes being replaced is just the beginning of becoming irreplaceable. Not by fighting against technological advancement, but by understanding more deeply than others how human expertise and artificial intelligence can work together to create something greater than either could achieve alone. In that understanding lies not just professional security, but the opportunity to shape the future of work itself. As Morgan and I exited the Nexus building to head back to our office, she glanced at me with a knowing smile. "Not bad for someone who was supposed to be obsolete, huh?" I laughed, feeling the warm satisfaction of a journey come full circle. But in a way no one, least of all me, could have predicted. "The funny thing about obsolescence," I replied, "is that it's often just a failure of imagination about what comes next. The real question isn't whether technology will change our work. It's whether we'll have the vision to change with it, and maybe even lead the way." With that philosophy as our guide, we stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight, ready to continue building the future, where humans and AI didn't compete for relevance, but collaborated to create possibilities neither could imagine alone. The CEO had said AI would replace me, but in the end, it had simply revealed a path to becoming something more valuable than I had ever been before. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.